It is written, not for the purposes, the first gift at the beginning. Isha, it's not written for the name of this particular woman. Is not kosher, it cannot be used as a divorce paper. Ketzad will give several examples of that. In other words, a get has to be written lishma. That means for the name of this woman, this man, this place, this time. Ketzad. An example. What if a person was passing in the marketplace? And he hears the voice of scribes calling out to their students. They're teaching him how to write divorce papers. And so they call out in school. Ish Ploni, this particular man. So they give a name, they grab a name. Let's say this name is divorcing this lady, this place, this certain place. Let's say Chicago. Well, Omar. And the guy passing by says, Zeh Shemit, that's my name, I'm Shimon. Also the garish book. It's prohibited for him to use that for a divorce paper for himself and his wife. He wants to save a few bucks, you understand? It cannot be used because it wasn't written to be used as a divorce at all. It certainly wasn't written for this particular man, this particular woman. They were just given an example. Yosemite King. More than this, another scenario, a second situation, looking around. What if a man wrote a divorce paper to divorce his wife? So now it was written for him and for her. There's no question about it. When he changed his mind, he doesn't want to divorce her. He changed. So a man in his city, a Ben Ero, son of his city, the same city in Chicago, he found the divorce paper, Omar, and he says, Shmit Kishmecha, my name is like your name. The name of my wife is just like your wife. Can I use it? Possible. The garish book. The second man is prohibited to divorce with it because it wasn't written for him or for his wife. All right, that's the second scenario. Now the third scenario. Yosef McCain. More than this. What if a man had two wives? This is the time before Rabbi Gershon, before the year 1000. A Jew was permitted to marry more than one wife if he could support her. They say he had two wives. Both on shovels, and they both had the same name. Both of them were named Rochel Bas Sora. One was Rochel Bas. He tends to divorce the older woman. He can't use the paper to divorce the younger woman, even though it was written specifically for him, for his wife, but it wasn't written for that particular wife. Now the fourth scenario, Yosef McCain, even greater than this. A person says to Labler is another word for sofer, for the scribe. Labler is another word for scribe. Agarish, you write this paper, the divorce paper, for me, I'll use it for either wife I want to use it for. Also the Garish Bo is still prohibited to divorce with it because he wasn't, at the time it was written, he had not yet made up his mind which one of the wasn't around all that. We have four situations here. Koget, every divorce paper. Kol Sofrim Bakari, here's the voice of the scribes calling out. Hagadolim, the older ones, Makorin the Talmidim, they're calling out to their students. Kishiyova get l'fanecho, when a divorce paper comes before you, write it this way, and they mention the name of a person in the world. And it turns out that's his name and her name. Yosef McCain, even more than that. Lo Zebavad, not only in this particular case, it was not written for the sake of divorce, Islamic, but only to learn. Even in the case, it was in fact written for the name of divorce. Gaburim, completely. He changed his mind. Also, it's not permitted to be used for anybody else. Yosef McCain, even more than this. More than this. He had two wives. Those not only this particular case, that was not written for the name of divorce of this particular man, also is it not kosher to be used. Even in this particular type of a case, he has two wives. It was in fact written for divorce. The high gavra of this man, apostle still cannot be used for a divorce. Since it wasn't written specifically in order to divorce this particular lady. What if he had two wives? They both had the same name, Gedola, the bigger one, Katana, and the smaller one. That usually also means the older one or the younger one. Not necessarily. They could even be the same age. But if he did intend for that particular lady, it's no good. Yosef McCain, even more than this. Omar Lalabra even says to the scribe, so I can use it for either of my wives. Kamash Malon comes to let us hear. We don't say this general rule that the matter, Ubror means to be clarified, the matter, Mafreya, going backwards. We don't say whatever he uses it for, that's presumably the way he intends to use it. No. We don't say, Ubror, Dover Mafreya, the thing is clarified going backwards. Gesibo, at the time of its writing, not his thinking was on this way. The Iko Gerushin, the day, the dawn, it should be a good divorce of him and her. Says no, unless we specifically know who we wanted to divorce ahead of time, it won't be effective. Any questions on this Mishnah? Or the next Mishnah? In very Gimel. Kosov Tofsi Gitin. A person that writes, remember we had Tofse is a form of the divorce paper. Every divorce paper has certain words in it. And then there's a Torah, the principal parts of it. The name of the man, name of the lady, name of the time, name of the place, that varies in each case. What if we have a situation where there's a lot of demand made on the scribes to write a lot of these divorce papers? So he wants to get a leg up. So he wants to prepare all the form of the get ahead of time and just fill in the blanks. Like now that we go to a stationery store and we buy a form and fill in the blanks, and that should be sufficient. So Akosif Tosik Gitin, the person that writes the forms of Gitin, if we permit that, we would force him to leave the place of the man empty until we know which one. On the name of the lady, and the name and the place of the time. That's in the case of divorce papers. Look inside. What if it was a document that was a loan transaction? He has to leave a blank, the place where he writes in the name of the lender, and the place where he writes in the name of the borrower, and the place where he writes in the amount of the money, and the place where he writes in the time. A third type of document, a bill of sale of real estate. He has to leave a place, a lokeach, where you write in the buyer of the real estate. And the place where you write in the name of the seller. And the place where you write in the amount of money involved. And the place where you write in the legal description of the field. And the place where you write in the time. Because of a takona, the rabbis in a certain time permitted the sofrim to write these forms, because presumably they would be so busy, they wanted him to have everything ready except the places, specifics of the day and the name of the man and the woman. The Lord Rabbi Huda says no. You cannot utilize this type of form. He says because we're worried about that you might also write ahead of time the Torah, the principal parts of it, and we wouldn't know that you read it for the name of this man, this woman. Rabbi Huda says you can use a form for the other types of documents, a document of a loan transaction, a document of a real estate sale, but he says, except divorce papers for ladies. that you cannot go and write ahead of time, even the form. Why? Shenemar, we have a passage in the course of law. You have to write her. That means lishma, for the name of her name and the name of the man and everything. And therefore, we worry about this in women's cases. We force them to write it all ab initio. We don't permit a form. And other times, other type of documents like a loan transaction or a sale of real estate, we might sometimes permit a form to be prepared ahead of time. The person that writes the forms of divorce papers, sofer, a scribe, that's all he wants that they be prepared by him. Sometimes a person may come to hire him, and he's bothered with other documents. So we want to give him a leg up, and he can write the form ahead of time. She has to leave blank the place of the man. Welcome Isha, the place of the woman. We write it in. And the place of the time. The Gemara Mosif. The Gemara also adds to this list. Af Mokum, he also has to leave open the space that he says the statement, Hari At Muteris L'Chodam. You are hereby permissible to all men. That means that is the final terminology used in a divorce paper. Not because of the decree of the rabbis, Atiru L'Kosav, they permitted to write Tofsi, the form of a divorce paper, Vishtaros, and even other documents, Shalovishmon, not for the sake of this particular people, because we want to fix up the scribe, that should be prepared for him. But only Shire Tori that they should remain the principal parts of it, the Torah, to write it for the name of the sake of this man, this woman, for their name. Gazrinen, and we make a decree, a more strict thing, Torah, worry about the Torah, the principal parts of the name of the man, name of the woman, time, stars. We worry about other documents. Atu Torah, we worry about the specifics of the divorce paper. Rabbi Yehuda calls of a Kohen. Rabbi Yehuda says no, everything is not kosher. The Gozer Tofes, because we make a decree against permitting even the form of the Torah because of the principal parts that have to be put in. Shtar Staros, and we worry about other documents of Tugit because of divorce papers. He permits preparing form papers ahead of time by all these other documents. Why? The law goes to Shtar Staros of Tugitin because he doesn't make a decree against other documents because of the divorce papers. But he does say, except if it's divorce papers for ladies, there he does not permit any writing of the form ahead of the time of writing the other part. Shinamar, because we have a passage, because of the law, you have to write for her, Ishma, for her name. Because we make a decree, toe-face, that you're not even supposed to write the form of the Torah because we're worried about specific, that we now write the entire document when we ever try to have a divorce. We don't write in a form. We start from Av Initio, write it from together. All right? Any question in this Mishnah? None? All right, let's go to the third Mishnah. The third Mishnah says, a person brings a divorce paper and it's lost from him. He loses it. It happens. So Matzul Alter, if he finds it immediately, then there's a pretty good chance that the one that was lost is the one that was found. Because the divorce paper is a kosher. It is kosher and it can be used. Even if it's lost in a place where there are a lot of caravans, if there are witnesses or they have some kind of a distinguishing sign, you can utilize that to identify that this is the document that was lost. Being loud, but if you don't find it right away, or you don't have distinguishing signs to identify it, also you cannot use it for a divorce paper. What if you find in a little chafisa is like a attaché case, a briefcase, where you put in documents. Oh, The loose kamal, or loose kamal is a little more, a bigger one, a bigger attaché case. Makiro, if you can recognize this is the document that you lost because you found it in the attaché case, kosher, it's still kosher to be used. You can use it for its purposes of divorcing. Maybe the person brings the divorce paper, and he leaves the man that sent it, an old man. We say, the Mishnah says, no snulov, he can give it to her as an agent for the cheskeshu kaim, with the presumption that he's still alive. This is called a chazak, a presumption that started from before. We always presume that what was still is, unless we have proof positive it has changed. For instance, you may have said hello to somebody you saw yesterday. You haven't seen him since. But we presume that just like yesterday he was alive, today he's also alive. Unless you heard differently in regards to that. So I always have a chazaka, a presumption that things are like they used to be. Unless we have some proof or indication that it's changed. Do you understand that concept? Israel HaNesua L'Kohen. What if a daughter of a regular Jew, Israel, married to a Kohen, and her husband goes to outside of this country, we say, she can still eat truma by virtue of being presumed to be the wife of the Kohen, because we have a presumption again that he's still alive. We haven't heard from him. He went outside the country, but we presume he's still alive. What if a person sends his sin offering to the temple, Yerushalayim, from the states of the sea, from outside of we may offer the sacrifice that he has sent to the temple, presumption he's still alive. Even though we may not have heard from him since he sent it, we presume he's still alive. Okay? The third Rabbeinu Batanura. He says like this. What if he finds the document he lost and he finds it immediately? Kosher, it can be used. But if you don't find it immediately, also it could be, it's not kosher. The only in a place where it was lost, in a place where there are a lot of caravans found there. The Ikot Meimer, we could say, it passed from those that are passing by or returning, it fell. So it may not be the document that he lost. But if he lost the divorce paper in a place where caravans are not found there, even after a long time afterwards, kosher is still kosher. We're on the third mission, the third parak. We're reviewing here. And gentlemen, you can pass another one. We're in the Bartanura. Bartanura says, even if you lost the divorce papers in a place where there are caravans can be found, and you could say perhaps it's not this document that was lost. If you have witnesses and they have a sign on it, muvok, that's outstanding, that you can recognize it, to go on, for instance, Shomru, the witnesses say, we recognized a hole there by the side of one of the letters, and they mentioned the letter. If you look in that document, there's a little hole. Now, you don't usually make a hole in the document, but if there happens to be a hole, this is a distinguishing sign. That's called the Siman Mubal. Or they say, or they can testify, we've never signed the divorce paper, but these, only this one that we signed with these names. So we were witnesses only in this area. This is our signature. And since this is this name, that's the only one that had these names in it, so kosher it can be used. Even after a long time, because it must be the document that was lost. Because it's too much of a coincidence to imagine that their signature is on a document that they never signed. It must have been that document. What if they put a chafisa in a small briefcase over the loose kamal or in a bigger chest where they kept documents? Amtachos in a type of a pouch, staros, that they're accustomed to put in documents. And there is a sign that it is here, it is. Imakiro, if they can recognize the document, look inside. Kosher. It is kosher, can be used. Milsa is a thing by itself. It's a different subject matter. This is what they say. He saw if you find it in a small briefcase over the loose kamal, or in a bigger chest that holds documents, even though even he can't recognize his divorce paper, or even he recognizes the divorce paper, we find that any place kosher, it's kosher, because he got some reason to say that the one that was lost is this one. If a person gave a divorce paper to somebody to be his agent, you may give it to the wife on the presumption he's still alive. And we don't worry, perhaps he died. Therefore it would nullify his agency. Because we say, we put the matter on its presumption. But if he knows definitely that she died, that the person died before the divorce came to her hand, the divorce paper is nullified. Ain't get lakramisa, because you can't divorce somebody after you're dead. And we say like this: what if a person sends from the outside of Israel? You may offer it. We may offer it. The coin may offer it as an agent for the one that's sending it. And we don't worry that the owner of the korban that died, and the husband of the owner died, the misa omedet, it is ready to be put to death. All right. Any questions about this? Now the fourth Mishnah in the third Gimel. Omar Revelov, and they verify his words and say all three things are correct. And on the ship, sort of torn apart in the situation where a person is going to be led to the execution, that was captured by siege troops. It was already captured by siege troops. It wasn't just a question of the Goyish soldiers surrounding the city. And a person is going to be executed. In the other first case, he went to have a trial, whether he's going to be found guilty or not. In the second case, he was going to be executed. In such a circumstances, we don't know what happened to the person. We put on them the more strict things of the living and the more strict things of the dead. Explain that in the Bartanura. If a daughter of Israel was married to a Kohen, in either case you can't eat truma. One is because maybe your husband is still alive, and one is maybe your husband has died. In either case you can't eat truma. Targum, Targum, the Aramaic says, Mozar Karkumin. This is besieging troops, Goyish troops. Or a ship that's Torefus, that's being destroyed in the ocean, Lido, or a person being led to judgment, capital punishment case. In those cases, we're in doubt how to treat it, so we go more strict in both areas. If a daughter of Israel is married to a Kohen, we go more strict and say perhaps the Kohen has died, and therefore she can no longer eat Truma. On Bas Kohen Israel, or the daughter of a Kohen, strict of the Levi, we say perhaps the Israel husband is still alive, so therefore she cannot go and resume eating Truma, which she would be if she had to go back to her father's house, the Kohen. All right, Mishnah Hay, yes. In an area where we're in doubt whether or not the person has died or not, we go more strict, so as to prohibit the wife of a Kohen or the daughter of a Kohen of eating Truma. Because we don't know exactly what the situation is. We're more at that time we're in doubt. Well, in the first cases where it wasn't completely sure that the ship would sink or the person would be found guilty of a capital punishment case, so there we presume that he's still alive. But in the other case where it's already it's a possibility that maybe he was put to death, so we have to be more strict in that area.
First case where like the city is under siege, in those cases we assume that the person's alive.
Still, yeah.
In the case where the city is overrun, those group of cases we assume the person is dead.
We don't know, so we're more strict in that
So we're
area.
more strict because
Yes.
it ties into the daughter.
Yes. Okay, fine. Now,
I'm sorry,
oh, fine, good. Mishnah Hay. See, we go over these and we review them and everything. Before you know it, you begin to get the concepts. Maybe you get the Eretz Yisrael. A person brings the divorce paper in Eretz Yisrael, which we presume is they're knowledgeable in the laws of Eden, and so therefore you shouldn't have to say before it was written, before it was signed. What you would have to say if you brought it from Kutz V'chola and he becomes sick, the shliach to bring it became sick. He took a train to Cleveland and he got sick. He has to come now to Chicago. And it's his friend who pointed him to Shaliach to bring it there. He can't make it. He's flat on his back. He can send it through another agent. The agent there can appoint another agent. And you don't need a Bezdin to appoint a second agent to act and as a substitute for the first agent. V'im Omar Lo, if he says to him, if the husband says to Shliach, you know what, I want you to be a Shliach to bring the my divorce paper to my wife, and I also want you to do me another favor. Take from her something that she has of mine and bring it back to me.
As proof?
No, just additional favors. If he says to him, take for me from her a certain article. In other words, he's giving him two tasks to do. One is to bring the to the wife, and when he comes to the wife, he says, please, your husband, after he gets divorced, your former husband, has asked me to bring back a certain article you have of his. The lady cannot send it to the hand of another one. Wait, the shliach cannot send the divorce paper to the hand of another one. Why not? Oh, because the husband did not want his entrusted article that the wife was holding in the hand of another one. We said in the first part of the Mishnah, if one person is sick, he can appoint unofficially another agent to act in his stead to bring it to there. But what if in addition to being an agent to bring the divorce, he also was appointed to bring back some kind of an article? There he can't appoint another agent. Perhaps the husband might not want to trust the other guy to handle trust this guy, but not somebody else. All right, Rabbi about the Nura and Hay. No, the same shliach is doing two things. He got sick in Cleveland, so he can't go and appoint another man to take his place. Because if he has to do two things, it could be that he could appoint another man to take his place to bring the divorce paper to the lady. But he can't appoint another man to take his place to take the article that was entrusted by the lady back to the husband.
Second person becomes a second shliach?
Yes. Unofficially.
Unofficially.
But it can only be a shliach to bring the document, but not to bring back something because maybe the husband would not trust the second guy. The first guy he knows, the second guy he doesn't know. All right. So the Ravina Batanura and Mishnah Hay says, maybe get to Eretz Yisrael. Person brings the divorce paper inside of Eretz Yisrael. Shein tzarach lomer for nisafim. In that area, you don't have to say before it was written, before it was signed. And he got sick. He can send it through the hand of another. Also, shaliach me'elo. He becomes an agent incidentally. With all the bezdin, you don't need another bezdin. A doctor was only the case when he became sick. Imomar lo. But if the husband, said to the shliach, to the agent, totally emano chayfetz ploni, take for me from her this particular article. She has a titain law as I get when you give her divorce, the alachir. He's not permitted to send it to the hand of another because perhaps the other is not trusted by the husband. All right? A Mishnah Vov in Peri Gimel. I maybe get with the Sayob, a person brings a bill of divorcement from the states of the sea, from outside of Eretz Yisrael, Chutz La'aretz. and he became sick. We know that if you bring it from outside Eretz Israel, you must say Poni Nichla Poni Nechla. So if you got to say before Nichla Poni Nechla, before it was written, before it was signed, you have to establish a Bezdin where you're at. So that's what he does. Also Bezdin, he makes another Bezdin in Cleveland, Mashalcho, and he sends the Omer Lahem, he says before them, he can say in front of the first Bezdin. And the second agent that's taking the place of the sick man doesn't have to say anymore before it's written, before it's signed, because it wouldn't be true. But since he's already appointed by a Bezdin in Cleveland, he could operate instead of the guy who became sick. He says, I'm an agent of the Bezdin. I'm acting on their behalf. And they said, this document is kosher. Because they'd already checked it out. When the sick man came there, he said, it was written before me and signed before me. He said, all right, we'll send somebody else to complete your agency. I look at also Bezdin, Shaliach, the agent of Mashalcho, and the one that sends him. Shaliach Bezdin, he says, I'm an agent of the Bezdin. Mustama, and ordinarily Bezdin also does over Ve'akshiro. The Bezdin will do the matter in a proper way. Shliach Sheni, and the second agent, second agent could appoint a third agent in case he got sick. Admerim to 100 agents. Kulam Bezdin, and all of them have to be before a Bezdin. It's not, we learned the Mishnah from Masnisa, and Shliach, the last one doesn't have to say part of it. Hello, Omar, he just has to say, I am an agent of the Bezdin. All right? And yes.
So the second agent would not have to say before me, written before me.
He can't. It wasn't written in front of him.
But this business takes place before a Bezdin, and the Bezdin.
Now the Bezdin
that the person did.
He did testify. The first agent testified, even though he's sick, that it was written in front of him. If he can't make it, he's got to go before Bezdin and appoint the third one.
Okay.
Keep on going.
And he doesn't have to, and he could say the Bezdin.
All right, Mishnah Zayin. We're going through all of them. Okay, Mishnah Zayin. Amal v'movus, that's a coin. What if a person lends money to a coin? A coin is entitled to receive certain agricultural taxes from the Jewish farmer in Eretz Israel. And that is approximately 2% of the crop. It's called truma. Some give 1.5%, and some more generous 2.5%, around that area. And the Jewish farmer also has to give meiser, that's a tithe, 10%, to the Levi. After he's given the truma and the meiser, the rest of the crop, the other 88%, he can utilize for his own purpose. Prior to that time, he cannot. So he says like this. What if he lends money to the coin? Now the coin is going to come around to his granary at the time of harvest and claim a certain portion of his crop. So perhaps the portion that the coin is going to receive as truma is like this. Amal v'moas, as the coin, person lends money to the coin. That's a Levi, or to the Levi, who gets truma, meiser. That's a oni, or they have a meiser oni, where a poor person gets some kind of a donation from the Jewish farmer. That's on the 3rd and 6th years of the cycle, the 7-year cycle. The os mafrish aleim echalkom, that he could go and take from them, from their portion. If he lends them money, it's a use security what they will be given in the harvest. Brish kayamin. He can separate the portion of the crops for them on the presumption that they're still alive. So we don't worry. Shema Mesa coin, perhaps the coin had died in the interim, or Levi, or the Levi died, Usher Oni, or that the poor person became wealthy. If a person is wealthy, he can't get Meiser Oni, the Meiser for poor people. It's interesting to understand we don't have to worry about the poor person becoming. That's a sad commentary. When you're poor, the chances of you becoming are not so good. Mesu, what if the person died? So You have to take permission from the ones that inherited from the dead person. Now, if he borrowed before a bezdin, he does not have to take permission from the inheritors of the property. Stephen the Bajadura says that. To separate from them from their portion. Pirish, like we explained, Truma Yamachrano, the Truma he can sell v'yo'akev adomim la'atzmo, and he can withhold the money for himself. V'shvil kobo, because of the debt, and sheyesh lo al coin, that the coin owes it. Meiser Rishon is the Meiser that's given to the Levi. Meiser Oni, and the Meiser Oni is the Meiser given to the third and 6 years. Ya'akev, this would hold back. He can withhold this back, the yoko, and he could eat it. B'shvil ha'chuv, in order to pay off the debt that the Levi or the poor man owes him. Elosha mafrish, but what you do is you take from the Meiser Rishon that goes to the Levi, Trumas Meiser, the coin. The Levi also has to give a certain type of truma. It's called Trumas Meiser to the coin. So what happens here? The coin gets truma. Truma is approximately 2%. It could be as little as 1.5%, or as much as 2.5%. The Levi gets Meiser. That's 10% of the crop. And when the Levi gets Meiser, the Levi has in turn take 10% of his Meiser and give it to the coin too. That's called Trumas Meiser. Meiser Rishon goes to the Levi. Trumas Meiser LeCoin. Also, if he is accustomed to give his Truma, a masro, is tight. Is that coin to this coin, or Halevi to this, or Oni, or to this poor person that they borrowed? Ain't circles them, masro stuff. He doesn't have to go and make a kinyan, an acquisition of his tithe, also, or his giving a Truma, al yad achir, to another person. He may take for himself immediately miyad achashiv yafrisho, after they separate, sort of like the paying off of the debt that they owe. But if he's accustomed not to give away his truma and his meiser to others, he cannot withhold it back to pay off his debt that they owe him. Till he gives it to them to another in the first instance. And afterwards, Yachzer, he can turn around, and take it for his debt that they owe him. If a person died, he has to take permission from the inheritors, that they inherited property that is Laval Chov, to the one that owns the loan. Thirdly, he told me, he has to ask permission from them. If they wish to pay off this debt, the Trumos goes to the coin, the Meiser goes to the Levi. The Shema Matnoseim, perhaps they want to take their gifts, pay back the debt. Rishon, that they have inherited from another place. Mishnah Ches. That would be we will have covered an entire period. Yes. Yeah. You see, the farmer is wealthy. The coin is a poor man, the Levi is a poor man, the poor person is a poor man. And they can't wait until the harvest. What does he do? He lends the coin some money, he lends the Levi some money, he lends the poor person some money. And where will he get it paid back? When the crop comes in. He'll take a portion of what the coin is getting in Truma to pay him back, or a portion of what the Levi is getting in Meiser, or a portion of what the Oni is getting in Meiser Oni. This is a method in which you encourage the wealthy landowner to help support his poor brethren.
When these people receive their Trumas or Meiser, then they will pay back the farmer.
Yeah. The second part says we don't have to worry that perhaps the status will change, that the coin would die, or the Levi would die, or that the poor person would become wealthy, prior to the harvest. If they did, of course, you can't do it, but if they didn't, we assume that they're still alive.
Then the farmer cannot.
If they died, he had to take permission from it was inherited to pay it back. It's a question of, he has to ask permission from them if they want to pay back the obligation from their mice. Perhaps they would prefer to pay it back from a different source. They do have to pay back the debt, but they don't necessarily have to pay it back from this like he intended. In chapter, Pharaoh's person lays aside certain fruits that he will later on depend on. He can eat his regular crop. He'll say, I'm going to take the Truma Meiser from the portions of fruits I've set aside for that matter. Say, for instance, we discussed, the Jewish farmer has to give about 2% of his crop to the kohen, and a certain part of his crop to the poor person on the third 6 years of the speech. Now, if he sets aside, say, for instance, 20% of his crop for taxes, he'll have some left over. He can utilize right away to 80%, whatever he needs to, because he's got a portion from which you can draw from, say, in the various agricultural taxes. The person puts aside to lead that you can take out from them to pay off the Truma and the Meisers, or he puts aside money to go and be able to pay off Meiser Sheni and finance trips to Yerushalayim on the 3 major holidays based on the Shen Kayomi. He could go and afterwards he could take aside the port of the Truma and the Meiser on the presumption that they're still alive. Although if they were lost, the portion that he set aside was lost, to worry about it for a 24-hour period prior to time, perhaps it was lost up to that time earlier. David Friedlander used the word 3 times, gave the wine to make sure that it hasn't changed into vinegar. When the east wind starts blowing, going out of the Chag, the holiday, that means, or the going out of Smodar. Now, what's Smodar? They have different shotim what Smodar is. Smodar is like an unripe grape. Rishas Knesses Mayim Kosar. Bringing water, breaking water in it. When you've seen the grapes, they first grow, they're very little objects, round objects. They get bigger. At first, they're little objects. You try to squeeze them, there's not much liquid in them. But a little bigger, then it starts developing liquid in them. So once the liquid starts developing, at that point we worry perhaps we have to investigate the wine to see that it hasn't changed to vinegar. Let's see the Bartanura says of this Mishnah. Pharaoh's person that sets aside to set aside from them, he's depending on these, and he can eat the other fruit, the other crop, the other 80%, Perim, others, Sheish Lo, he had. Omar, and he says, Hari Tumasa, their Truma, Osa Pharaohs will be in those fruits, that I've set aside for this purpose. These fruits are lost. Allah, he goes to investigate them, and he finds that they were lost. So how long does he have to worry? Perhaps they weren't available publicly, but the other crop, other part of the crop, Shetikas that he fixed up by setting them aside. So how free man, he has to separate from them, Omar, Hari, the Pharaohs. So that's they were already lost. So how long does it have to be? 8 days for 24 hours. Okay. It is written, not for the purposes, the first Gimel of the Shalom Shub Isha is not written for the name of this particular woman. Puzzle is not kosher, it cannot be used as a divorce paper. Ketzad will give several examples of that. In other words, a get has to be written lishmo. That means for the name of this woman, this man, this place, this time. Ketzad. An example. What if a person was passing in Rishomako Sofrim Makori, and he hears the voice of scribes calling out to their students. They're teaching him how to write divorce papers. And so they call out there, in school. Ish Ploni, this particular man. So they give a name, they grab a name. Let's say this name is Shimon ben Yaakov. So they say Ish Ploni. Megarish is divorcing as Plonis. This lady, Ploni, from this place, this certain place, let's say Chicago. Omar. And the guy passing by says, Zeh Shimi, that's my name. I'm Shimon ben Yaakov. So that's the name of my wife. Also the garbage bowl. It's prohibited for him to use that for a divorce paper for himself and his wife. He wants to save a few bucks, you understand? Not be used because it wasn't written to be used as a divorce at all. It certainly wasn't written for this particular man, this particular woman. They were just given an example. Yosemite King. More than this, another scenario. Second situation, looking around, go as Ishto. What if a man wrote a divorce paper to divorce his wife? So now it was written for him and for her. There's no question about it. Nimlach, but he changed his mind. He doesn't want to divorce her. He changed his mind. And Matsu ben Iro. So a man in his city of Ben Iro, son of his, the same city in Chicago, he found the divorce paper. Omar, and he says, Shmit Kishmecho, my name is like your name. The name of my wife is just like your wife. Can I use it? Puzzle, marriage bowl. The second man is prohibited to divorce with it because it wasn't written for him or for his wife. All right, that's the second scenario. Now the third scenario. Yoser Mikain. More than this. Hayelo Shtei Noshim. What if a man had two wives? This is the time before Rabbi Gershon, for the year 1000. A Jew was permitted to marry more than one wife if he could support her. Shmoson Shavos, and they both had the same name. Both of them were named from this family, and the other one's Rachel Batzar from this family. So Kosev the Garish Bo is a Gedolah. What if he writes, he intends to divorce the older woman? Holy Garish Bo is a Katana. He can't use the paper to divorce the younger woman, even though it was written specifically for him. And specifically for his wife, but it wasn't written for that particular wife. Now the fourth scenario. Yosef became even greater than this. A person says to the labler is another word for sofer, for the scribe. Labler is another word for scribe. Kosev the Ezu She'erza Agarsh. You write this paper, the divorce paper, for me. I'll use it for either wife I want to use it for. At the time it was written, had not yet made up his mind which one of the ones and all that. We have four situations here. Koget, every divorce paper. Kol Sofrim Makari. Here's the voice of the scribes calling out. The older ones, Makari the Talmidim, they're calling out to their students. When a divorce paper comes before you, this way. And they mention the name of a person in the world. And it turns out that it's his name and her name. Yosef McCain, even more than that. Lo Zevavad, not only in this particular case, it was not written for the sake of divorce, but only to learn. Even in the case, it was in fact written for the name of divorce. Gaburim, completely. He changed his mind. Also, it's not permitted to be used for anybody else. Yosef McCain, even more than this. More than this. He had two wives. Those, not only this particular case, she just thought of that was not written for the name of divorce of this particular man. Also, it is not kosher to be used. In this particular type of a case, he has two wives. It was in fact written for divorce. The high gaura of this man also still cannot be used for a divorce. Since it wasn't written specifically for in order to divorce this particular lady. What if he had two wives? They both had the same names. Gedola, the bigger one, Katana, and the smaller one. That usually means it also means the older one and the younger one. And not necessarily. It would even be the same age. But if he didn't intend for that particular lady, it's no good. Yosef McCain, even more than this. Omar Lalabler even says to the scribe, write it so I can use it for either of my wives, or Kamash Malon comes, let us hear. We don't say this general rule that the matter, Hubror means to be clarified, the matter, Mafreya, going backwards. We don't say whatever he uses for it, that's presumably the way he intended. We don't say, Hubror, Dover Mafreya, the thing is clarified going backwards. And that at the time of its writing, Namidaite Aho, his thinking was on this way. Iko Gerushin, the day, it should be a good divorce of him and her. Says no, unless we specifically know who he wanted to divorce ahead.